Yes, okay, we are on the YouTube now. Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hi.
to the astrology monthly transit discussion for AOA UK. I'm a little bit, wobbling because hello, Wendy. About Mandy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hi.
It's a bit funny here because I apologize for a little bit delay because when I try to log in, something like an email doesn't work. I was like, what's wrong here? And then suddenly it's just like my mind just go everywhere, try to remember password and everything. Well, I would say today is only me and Monday. Marcus have something else to do, so he will join us, next month. Well, it is a very interesting month, isn't it?
It's intense. It's eclipse season, everybody.
Yes, I think there's so many going on because I think things last week we have the Venus stationary and the retrograde, and then the coming up week is going to have the Mercury is going to stationary and the retrograde, and then eclipse. Eclipse
Mhm.
coming one after another. And this time is very interesting because we have eclipse kind of a very close to the Aries ingress.
Mhm.
So from the mundane astrology view, it's kind of kind of quite heavy, pretty heavy. So, well, can we start with the most light and the familiar? Maybe Venus retrograde at this moment. How do you interpret the Venus retrograde?
Yeah, so she went retrograde on the 2nd of March, and it's a 40-day retrogradation. She went retrograde in Aries. She will go back at the end of March, 27th of March, back into Pisces, but most of it is going to be, for this purposes of this video, for March's astrology, it's Venus in Aries. Now, in the tradition, Venus in Aries is in its detriment. So it kind of the planets visit signs of the zodiac. It's like having he's a guest in the house, and in Aries, Venus isn't the most welcome guest. That's kind
Mm,
of what you might say. So we have those Venusian themes of yielding, of partnering, of collaboration, and of cooperation, and people pleasing, and sort of looking at the other person and trying to sort of find the common ground between them. The energy of Aries is more independent, it's more self-focused, it's more single focus. Once Aries has a single focus, they will just be like a laser beam and they'll go for it. Whereas Venus, say in Libra, will be like, oh, well, what does other people think? Do you want to come along
mm,
for the ride? Whereas Aries is like, I'm just going to go for it. I haven't got time to waste. So it's a very different energy for Aries. So this is the energy into which we go Venus retrograde. It can be retrograde. Sometimes we'll sort of see some of the not so positive stuff about the planet in that sign. So insense, insensitivity. It can be very demanding. It can be very impulsive, as I said, very sort of direct. And then, really, what we've got to do with Venus retrograde, it's like all retrogrades, it asks us to reevaluate the
mm,
things to do with that planet. So bearing in mind this fiery Aryan energy that knows what it wants and goes for it and doesn't want to wait, doesn't want to cooperate, others can follow if they like, but you're just going to go for it anyway, even if you have to go it alone. So it's about really reevaluating how those kind of values are showing up in your life, in your own life, or in your relationships, or even out in the world. I think we can see some of these Venus in Aries themes playing
mm,
out in world politics at the moment very strongly already. Those values, those beliefs. It's also about self-worth as well.
mm. Yeah.
How do you value your own autonomy, your own sovereignty, your own go-getting for what you want to go for? And how do you balance that with, you know, not upsetting everybody else
Yeah.
that's around you, kind of thing. So values, belief, and self-worth, those are three key things for Venus. And then of course relationships as well. Funnily enough, there's sometimes talk when Venus is retrograde that old flames might come back into your life,
Ooh.
particularly in Venus in fiery Aries. So who knows whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, depends on what the relationship, but certainly it might be a time to review and reevaluate and reflect upon, although Venus is not particularly reflective. When it goes towards Pisces later on in the month, there's that more
Mm,
reflectiveness. Reflect on how your relationships have gone in the past and how those relationship dynamics have come through in other relationships going forward. If it's not necessarily an old flame will pop up into your life or onto your into your DMs, as they say, not going to slide into your DMs, particularly, might do, but how the lessons that you've learned and how you can be, you might need to be more direct, or you might need to be less direct. You might need to be more sort of healthily selfish or less selfish,
definitely.
depending on the balance in your life and in your relationships. And then the other real factor for review is, of course, finances. Venus has something to do with finances. It's about
Hmm.
your income and your resources and how you spend. And again, there's very much a lot of talk, these are in our personal lives, we can all relate to that. Where do we need to budget? Are we overspending? Are we saving enough? Or what do we do that with our money? Venus in Aries is probably like impulsive. It might be, maybe perhaps you're overspending, you need to sort of look into that, or whatever it is. But resources in generally, what are your resources? Also your psychological resources as well come into it. But again, we can see finances and resources and spending coming up as a huge topic in world politics as well at the moment as well.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Because like you just mentioned about the world politics, yeah, politics, and then we know at this moment, the US is changing their position and their view of the world, and used to be seen as a alliance from Europe or even Ukraine. Now it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's something like when you mentioned about the relationship, one sentence jumped in my mind. I don't know, is that correct? Please correct me. Is that hold your horse?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold your horses. Yeah. That it's all that image of a horse just going, phew, fast
Yeah,
into it. Yeah, come on, hold back a little
yeah,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that was very interesting. I agree with that. Things is like it's about the reflect and it's
Hmm.
take a little bit of time to think about what is really precious for us. The Venus is the things we really love, really precious. So it take a little bit of time to think about it, to examine it, right?
Yeah. And Venus is also about your comfort zone in a slightly
Oh
different way
yes.
to the moon. The moon is your emotional comfort, but the Venus is about the beautiful things that you like to surround yourself with. That you know, Venus. When we talk about money and spending, what do you spend
Yeah.
your money on? Luxuries. That income, that money that you have. It's about the disposable income. What's your disposable income, and what you spend that on says a lot about your values. And maybe it's time to reflect on, do these things reflect your true values, or are you just maybe spending or not spending to sort of
Mm,
impress other people, or to give a certain impression that might not particularly be true to who you are? So these are quite a lot of things to reflect upon, if any of that
yeah.
kind of touches a nerve during this Venus retrograde period, which goes up
Yes.
until when does it go back? Finishes on the 13th of April. So
13th
we've got,
April.
yeah, so we've got a good just over a month to go.
Yes, and it's very interesting because this time, not only Venus retrograde, and from the I think 15th of March, I think the day after the lunar eclipse, Mercury is going to retrograde too. So I think different astrologer will say different time for the stationary. I give a very wild type, so from
Mhm.
8/12 to the 18th, something like that. When
Yeah,
when Mercury arrives, something like 9-degree Aries, we can consider is a stationary. So the two things are two personal planet going to
yeah,
retrograde together.
in
How,
Aries
yeah, in Aries, how funny it is. And
at the
both
same
move
time.
back from Aries and back to Pisces. It's so
Mhm.
interesting. How do we, how do you interpret this Mercury retrograde and the
Mercury in
stationary?
retrograde. The first thing that in Aries, the first thing that comes up for me is, again, with fiery Aries. Obviously, it's ruled by Mars. War of words. Be
Mm.
careful of how you speak, and but it's also direct speaking, being direct. And there's something about Mercury in Aries that speaks of just being honest, even if that's
Hmm.
brutally honest, frank and honest, and just saying it like it is. But again, we have to think about feelings of the feelings of others and these ideas
Hmm.
because Venus is retrograde as well. We have to think about the ruler of Venus, the natural ruler of Venus is Libra. And we have to think about, balancing with the other side and cooperating because we're all in relationship with
Hmm.
other people, with the world, whether we want to be or not. So there's always two sides to every coin. And I think with Mercury retrograde, it may be time to think about, are we only seeing one side of the coin? What's on the flip side of the other side of the coin? This is what I think, and I'm going to directly tell you what I think, but I might not necessarily be listening to your point of view. So these are maybe a few little things to sort of think about in terms of reflection and the usual Mercury retrograde things about you know um, detail, attention to
Hmm.
detail. Aries can be in a rush to get things done, can be a little bit
Hmm.
sloppy. So if there's anything that needs signing or anything that needs to get done that involves a lot of detail, just double check, otherwise you might end up having to redo it again. Review, revise, redo, and also rest, I think.
Oh, rest.
Rest is also a good word for a personal planet retrograde if
Hmm.
it hits your chart. And as you said, it goes retrograde on the 15th of March, 14th, 13th, 14th, 15th of March, because as you explained, Rod, there's that stationary period when it's not moving, and then
Yeah.
so it's not like really precise,
Hmm.
but it's on the ninth degree of Aries, which is interesting because we're going to be talking about the solar eclipse towards the end of March,
Yeah.
which is on the ninth degree of Aries.
Oh, could
Yeah,
this be could this be a kind of preview
yeah,
the station
yeah,
if we focus
yeah,
on because
yeah.
they echo each other.
By the time of that eclipse, we'll look at it shortly. Yeah, we're going to look at the lunar eclipse first, I think, aren't we? But when we look at
Yeah.
that later on in March, that solar eclipse, it's the Mercury isn't on the ninth degree of Aries then, but it is when it goes retrograde, and that's the way eclipses work. Are certain degrees become very potent, and when we look at that one as well, spoiler alert, there's also an incredibly potent degree of the eclipse itself, but we're getting ahead of ourselves because I'm
Yes,
excited.
indeed. Oh, yeah, cool. I think it is very interesting. I mean, let's stay here for maybe one more minute. I really like your interpretation about this Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde, and I agree. It's about reflect, and I surprisingly, you know, they never think about the rest. It's part of a retrograde process, but it's true. It's true. One thing draw my attention is the both planet are moving from Aries, from fire sign, back to water sign. And the more interesting because later this year we have Neptune moving to Aries and the Saturn moving to Aries, and they all by the end of the year they all also move back to Pisces, right?
Oh,
They're
yeah.
both doing that. So this acts this two sign moving between you know Aries and the Pisces is like we all know that Aries is about the starting of the journey, starting
Mhm.
point. We start to explore the new world. Suddenly we say, "Oh no, I'm not ready. Let me crawl back to Pisces world." There's a
Yeah.
feeling like that, but in another way. Well, my imagination it works like you know the Aries is like we are going to conquer or get something done. And it's like, yes, I want this. But then they pull us back, say, hey, come back, just wait a little bit and think a little bit more. And, how do you feel? It's not just you want something. How do you feel? And are we understanding other people's feeling? Because we are not just individual. Like you say, we all partner or we all linking with other people. So
Yeah.
this Pisces hold you back to Pisces is kind of invite you. to look inward and intentionward, or maybe your mind, your feeling a little bit more before we start it again. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree because not only is it, a big change of sign, we've got Neptune at the moment, I think at 29 degrees of Pisces. It's the very last degree of the zodiac, and Aries is at zero. Aries is the very first degree of the zodiac. So you've got that strong sense of a whole cycle completing, a longer cycle completing. And I think this is one of the major themes, this sense of completion and moving forward, but also taking the lessons from the past, because we've also got Saturn
Mm.
coming up to have, eventually, I think in February next year, Saturn and Neptune are going to be conjunct at 0 degrees in Aries. So you've got that sense of completion,
Mm.
learning lessons from the past, so that you can go forward into a better, brighter future and create something really new and positive. The birth,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Aries is the birth, isn't it? Representing
Yes,
the
indeed.
birth of something very strongly, which is really interesting. And I think it's up to us to decide whether we birth something beautiful, a beautiful
Mm.
bouncing baby, or whether we birth something that's rather less cute, shall
Mhm.
we say.
Definitely,
As a
definitely.
collective, I'm talking about as a collective, we do have the choice, I believe, even at this stage when things seem to be going rather bananas, in my
Uh,
view, for
no,
want of
no,
a
no. I
better
agree
word.
with you. I agree
Mm,
with you because my recent experience is about I focus on a lot of political news, geopolitical, and apparently a lot of things I read were kind of not what I'm familiar with now. Used to familiar with love everyone, we respect everyone or something. Now it's American first, and everyone's trying to protect themselves, protect ourselves. And that is for me, it's okay, I cannot change that, but I
mhm.
can change my view and how I'm going to respond. So,
Yeah, yeah.
that is also a bit homework we are doing at this moment.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget, we've still got Mars in Cancer, and it's had a long tenure in Cancer because of its retrograde. It's still in
Oh,
Cancer.
yes.
It's going to be coming up. I can't remember. So I think maybe April. I think it's going to be coming up. It's going to be going into Leo, and it's third and final uh, opposition with Pluto. But for now, I think it's about 18, 19 degrees of Cancer, and it's been marked in, as we say, geopolitics. It's been marked by defence, speaking about defence spending, about countries wanting to protect their borders, to
Yeah.
protect home and country, that we're in Europe, for example, is going into rearmament, remilitarization, trying to shore up its military forces. So that defensive and protectiveness has been really big theme for this Mars in Cancer as well. But with things going into 0 of Aries, as we've just been talking about, well, we will see what's
Yeah.
going on. Pisces often things are a bit nebulous, things are a
Yeah.
bit confusing, things are happening below the surface, and we're still going to have, like you said, it's going back into Pisces and then into Aries and back again. But we will start to see things more directly and more
Mm,
clearly moving forward,
yes.
I think.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the coming up full moon. And this is not just a full moon, isn't it, Monday?
It is an eclipse full moon, a total
Ooh.
lunar eclipse.
Or some media love enjoy say a blood moon. Well, I don't know since when they always told lunar eclipse a blood moon.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me share the chart and we can have a good discussion. Here we are. I have the full moon chart here is on the 14th of March, and I think the sun is at 23-degree Pisces and the moon is 23-degree Virgo. Well,
Well,
how do you feel?
you've got the moon there in Virgo out on its own on that side of the chart. And
Ah,
the chart
yeah.
obviously set for London, but it's kind of on its own. And then you've got, as I say, all this Aries Pisces energy that we've already talked about. It's
Yes.
really strong in this chart. And what I think is interesting is you can see the sun here is in Saturn Neptune sandwich, if you will. Node is there. The node is there close to the sun because that's what makes it an eclipse, because it's close to it's a full eclipse is a full moon or a new moon that is very close to the node. So you've got this kind of sandwich. But in terms of the themes we're looking at here, isn't it, Rod? It's the theme of that axis of Virgo and Pisces. So
Yeah.
eclipses are always about beginnings and endings. And I think also because of so many planets coming to 29 degrees, as you see here, Neptune already, but other planets such as Uranus and Saturn are coming up to 29 degrees and then changing signs this year and next year. I think these eclipses, hey, have a lot to say about what we need to complete. Completion. And it's also interesting when you look at the numerology for this year. Numerologically, we're in a 9 year, which is also the completion of a cycle. So I think that's a strong
Ah.
theme at the moment that's going through the astrology, but also through the numerology, and they're kind of tying up a little bit. But I mean, when you're looking at Virgo Pisces, you're looking at the analytical mind versus the feeling mind and the intuition, the
Mm-hmm.
idea of control and surrender. Virgo, you've got that moon in Virgo. It can be, that's quite a controlling moon. It wants to control things. It wants to feel safe, like the moon always does. And Virgo, when it wants to feel safe, wants to control everything, and micromanagement. And I think this eclipse is kind of showing you, well, actually control what you can, but you might have to surrender some things or just let go. It's
Ah.
a south node eclipse. So you see the moon there, you've got the south node conjunct the moon there in this chart on the sixth house. Again, that's about, because south node is about what you need to let go of, what's coming to an end so that you can move forward. And then the letting go and holding on. And then when I looked at this sort of Saturn Neptune sandwich here,
Yeah.
very strong in Pisces, it's that tension, it's that build up of that tension between idealism, hopes and wishes, and yearning for something perfect, something better, where that meets hard reality, which is the Saturn part of it, where the substance actually lies. So those are some sort of themes, and again, the disintegration of structures, new boundaries, confusing boundaries constantly moving. I'm talking more sort of in terms of world events and mundane astrology here, but kind of might relate as well to the personal life if this eclipse falls strongly on your chart. I always think with eclipses, look for a planet or a point in your chart that falls within sort of 2 degrees either side of the
Mm.
eclipse, probably no more than that. And I only tend to look at the oppositions and the conjunctions rather than all the other little,
Mm-hmm.
you can look at the squares, you can look at the quincunx, you can look at the sextiles or whatever, but for strength of a manifestation of what that eclipse might mean for you, I think it's looking at the conjunctions and the oppositions is the way to go, particularly with the lunar eclipse, because it's all about those oppositions, isn't it?
I'm with you, especially interestingly. I don't know where we get this from, but when I look at about eclipse, I always focus on conjunction and opposition of the sun
Mm.
and the moon point because I feel that is the most powerful position to receive the impact or either impact or energy of
Yeah.
this eclipse. And then yes, I agree that Pisces and Virgo axis together with
Mm.
a Saturn, you call it a Saturn Neptune sandwich. I was like, quite. I don't know why I still feel quite meaty and juicy. I don't know why, but maybe not. But that there is a kind of a reputation or double whammy because one side is like earthy and the Saturnian side of a reality
Yeah.
and get
Yeah.
things done
Yeah.
and quite shy. Another
Yeah.
side is a Neptunian and a Piscean quality about the dreamy,
Yeah.
watery,
Yeah.
and intangible. So it could be a bottle. It could be a bottle between the two sides, but it could also two sides finally working together because
Mm.
don't forget Saturn has been stay in Pisces for all this year. And
Yeah.
well, I think Saturn will at least understanding, how to play in this, this ocean, and the changing ocean, this wave keep coming and they keep changing. Saturn can hold it, hold it. Yeah, you have a dream, but you have to start from, scratch and something
Yeah.
better. But even the rule or the word keep changing.
Hmm.
But
Mm.
there is some principle you are going to hold. For example, well, the world is changing. Even that's against what you believe before. Are you going to agree with the most powerful man of the world say that is wrong?
Hmm.
So Saturn is there to give us a lesson. Say, are you going to hold your principle in this
Yeah.
changing world, or are you going to really just following whatever people say and you say, okay,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah,
And also because it's in Pisces, that there's it's harder to set those strong boundaries and say this is what I think and this is what I feel, and that's never going to change. Of all the mutable signs, I think Pisces is the most mutable sign. It kind of, changes its mind, and we're talking about ideological struggles as well. Is in
Mm,
mundane astrology, that's something that comes under Saturn and Neptune. That Saturn Neptune cycle historically, ideological struggles and a change in
mm,
ideology. But we're going through this confusing time where we're not quite sure where we're
mm.
going and what also world events are moving so quickly, it's kind of hard to keep up.
Yes.
Many people are saying they don't watch the news anymore, but if you miss 2 days of the news, you're like, well, I don't know what's going on, and you get even more confused because these eclipses, they talk personally, but they talk to how the collective feeling is going. And that moon in Virgo, that kind of, we can Virgo's about the small things. So in our home and in our environment, in our comfort zone, if we can kind of micromanage or control those small things that will make us feel safe,
Mm,
maybe all this big stuff opposite the moon here in this chart is
definitely.
going to be a little bit more easy to digest, because I think Virgo also has something to do with the
Yeah.
digestion.
Yeah. I would like to add in a tiny bit about the fixed star into this full
Oh yes,
moon.
please.
Yeah.
I love it when you
Okay.
do that.
Well, one thing is that because it's a re-emphasize of what we say. To be honest, that is when I added these two fixed stars in. So first, I want to mention about is a Sun at 23 degree Pisces. Here, align with the a fixed star called markup from the Pegasus. So here is according Benedict Brady, this fixed star is located at this, the saddle of the horse. So where you sit on the horse, and so the flying Pegasus, the flying horse is a move super fast. It move very fast and seeking for the freedom and the creation and creativity. But here is a subtle. Here is the place is the hero sitting on. So it's a stable place, a kind of a comfortable, stable place on the fast-moving world. So
Wow.
it's like an anchor, right? It's like that
Wow.
Saturn conjunct the sun.
Wow.
So it's just I
Wow.
emphasize this fixed star is so interesting, and we have this full moon, this lunar eclipse here. So, well, not only maybe for next 6 months or 1 years,
Mhm.
we are thinking about we're moving so fast. Remember this eclipse when we're working with each other, when we're working with other people, we have to find our anchor. We have to find our stable position to.
Oh, Rod, you've just blown me away. Remember what you said earlier? Hold your horses.
Yes.
I mean, that describes it, doesn't it? Saturn there, hold your horses.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, you want to move
yeah,
forward that Aryan energy, really, like, you're almost like holding back, holding back, holding back,
yeah,
holding back, like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it's
Wow.
it's very stable. So don't be
Yeah.
afraid. Find your balance. Take all the time you need before
Mm.
you moving on. But you just be be well balanced and stabilized, and then you can go to get what you want. Another side that even more interesting. The on the this side, on the Virgo side, there is another fixed star. It's not on the ecliptic denier, but it's on 23 degree of the Virgo. Is aligned with the fixed star called Alkes. Is from the Cratus. Uh, the Cratus is is on the serpent. Is on the Hydra's back. There's a little cup. Is belong to Dionysius or some mythology related to Apollo. Apollo gave these cups to the raven to fetch some water. That's the story about why the serpent, why the Hydra and the raven and the cups there. But interestingly, Benedict Brady related to this crater as the Holy Grail. And we
Wow.
know Holy Grail is not just whatever cup, right? It's a cup for the Christian mythology is the blood of Jesus, but the image come from even ancient, something like some vehicle holding for the life essence, or it could
Wow.
be related back to the womb, females,
Yeah,
womb
yeah,
where
yeah. The
where
lunar. Yeah.
contain, where hold the sacred life. So there is one part is stability, stabilized, and another part is like we have to think about life itself rather
Mm.
than I want this, I want to conquer this, I want to attack that. But the life itself is precious, is sacred. So these two, this lunar eclipse is so important and it's so interesting when we added the meaning of big star in. We can see the bigger picture.
Yeah, that it just becomes so rich in the symbolism when you were talking
Yeah.
about the womb and Virgo
Oh
being
yes.
an earth sign, the maiden, the virgin, and it took me back to the idea of, we're all children on this planet. We're all
Hmm.
on a playground in this planet, and
Yes.
we have to play nice
Agree.
together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I remember when I was at school and, kids would fall out in the playground all the time. And then you see that in writ large in world events. And the teacher would come along and say, come on, children, play nice. Maybe
Play nice. Yeah.
that's one of the that simplifying it
Yeah.
massively. But again, Virgo likes to simplify things, yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Mm.
Easy to understand. Should we
But
move to the
But
oh
before
yeah.
before we go, I just want to say I love that analysis. Thank you, Rod. Really
Oh,
rich,
thank you. Thank
really
you.
rich and deep. It's fantastic. Just demonstrating. I don't tend to use many fixed stars, but whenever I see you use them, and Marcus does as well when Marcus joins this
Mm,
talk, and it just adds so much
yeah. Different
understanding and
way.
so many layers of metaphor and symbolism that we can work with.
Yeah, I think that's why we love astrology, isn't it?
Mm,
There's so many layers there, and not only daily routine, but we can also in a
mm,
spiritual way, a psychological way, and
yeah,
also when we face the challenge, how we going to see the things, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Should we move to the
Cool.
more important one that are coming
Oh my
up?
goodness. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
big one, big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Solar eclipse on the 29th of March. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, so this one is at again 9 degree
9 degrees of
Aries.
Aries, which is where Mercury went retrograde. Mercury is still retrograde. It's gone back to 0 degree of Aries here on this eclipse. Just if I can make an aside, you'll know this, Rod. When you start looking at the astrology and you go down a rabbit hole and you look at things, you go, oh wow, okay. So when we look at eclipses, we will talk about the meaning of this eclipse, but when we look at eclipses, we look at powerful degrees in an eclipse and when they're triggered. So we've got that Mercury there. We've already talked about Mercury when it was at 9 degrees of Aries, but in this chart, it's at 0 degree of Aries
Hmm?
in the chart. And that's obviously the powerful degree. It's the first degree of the zodiac. It's the creation degree. It's the birth degree. It's where things come out in the public and things are seen and heard. And this is, of course, where next year, February next year, so this is a
Hmm?
trigger point, February next year, I think the date's the 20th of February to the time of the end of May, Saturn and Neptune, who we've already talked about, are going to be conjunct at 0 degree of Aries. So this is really one to watch. Now, this is
Hmm.
the rabbit hole I went to. So I looked for when they last met, when Venus, sorry, not Venus, when Saturn and Neptune last met at 0 degrees in Aries. Thank goodness I've got software because I was going
Yeah.
back, back, and back, and back, and back. But just for readers, basically, there's a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune every 36 years.
Hmm.
And the big cycle, so it comes around again, it starts again in Aries, a conjunction in Aries every 323 years. So the last one was in 1703, and the one before that was 1380. So it describes big, this cycle describes big epochs, big eras in history. So I just thought, out of interest, I would look at the last time that they were not just conjunct in Aries, Saturn and Neptune, but conjunct 0 of Aries. And you'll never guess how many it was.
Oh.
It was the year 404,361 BC, if you can believe that. So I had a little look. It was the very early beginnings of the Bronze Age.
Yeah.
It was the very almost the sort of, it was just as the Egyptian dynasties were starting to gain some prominence, but again early. It was pre-pyramids,
Mm.
and woolly mammoths were still walking the earth. First of all, Egypt, there's been a lot, we've got this conjunction coming up. It's nearly upon us. It's certainly in spiritual circles, spiritual teachers, spiritual leaders. A lot of them are talking about Egypt, going to trips to Egypt,
Mhm.
trying to recover some of the mystical magic and some of the codes and downloads, as they talk, the spiritual codes and downloads from ancient Egypt. So there's been this real spiritual surge of energy put into Egypt. That's one thing, because it goes back to the Egyptian time when it was last in 0 of Aries. That's something to watch if that's your thing. But the one that really struck me is quite funny when I said that woolly mammoths were still walking the earth. These big tusked creatures with like almost
Yeah.
elephantine, with with massive woolly coats,
Yeah.
and all the rest of it. Um, just this week, there's a story all over the normal media and all the science websites that scientists have been trying to recreate the woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
What they've actually, they're trying to find the DNA so that they can bring the woolly mammoth back to life. Why, I don't know, and no one seems to know why. What they have managed to create is woolly mammoth mice. Mice with
Uh-huh.
woolly mammoth, with like big, long, thick, woolly coats. I just thought, I don't know, it's just a silly bit of astrology. I thought that was just a fun thing to share, just to show we come into this
Yeah.
0 Aries conjunction.
Yeah.
And what do? We bring back the woolly mammoth, but we bring it back in the form of a mouse. Anyway,
Yeah, definitely.
there you
But
go.
it's so important because the cycle, this is what we study. Another
Mm,
part of astrology, who
mm,
you call it down to the rabbit hole, and which is rabbit hole, because which is true when every time when astrologers see a pattern, we will ask ourselves if I want to forecast what's going to experience,
mm-hmm,
then we should consider when was the last time these two planets met at this
mm-hmm,
degree. And
mm-hmm.
that is so interesting. So 4,000 BC, and that was like a wow, long time ago. So the two planets, Saturn and the Neptune, met each other
Mm.
at a 0 degree. Aries was a that
Yeah,
long
it was all
ago.
that time, according to my software, which I've got no reason to doubt its accuracy. But the reason why I think this is important, 0, because we've already talked about 0 of Aries, is
Yes.
is is that birth degree, that first degree of the zodiac. It's the creation degree, and what are we going to create? But I just thought I'd
Mm.
share that. I thought that was a little bit of fun, but also something to think about.
Definitely, definitely. But how about this powerful eclipse in the Aries? It's like going to boost up powerhouse. It looks like a powerhouse, isn't it?
It does, and you look at the top of the chart, and you've got all this. It looks like there's a big cluster again in Aries and
Hmm.
Pisces. But when you actually look at the sun and the moon, the only aspect they make is a semi-square, tight aspect they make is a
Hmm.
semi-square to Uranus. So in that
Yeah.
respect, it's what's known as a singleton when you get two planets in aspect, but they're not really aspecting anything else in the
Ah,
Ptolemaic system. Ptolemaic is just the major aspect, so it's the conjunction,
yeah.
the square, the opposition, the trine, the sextile,
Hmm.
those ones, the big ones. So yeah, so we can see that whatever the sun and moon represents and whatever Uranus represents is going to be really important for this. And whenever Uranus is on the scene and it's making contact, we've got breakthroughs, breakdowns, with shocks and surprises and awakenings.
Yeah, with these Uranus, I think if this is the only aspect, that is very interesting.
Mm.
So, in the traditional view, if there's no other Ptolemaic aspect, that means consider they are alone. They are like a
Yeah, yeah,
island on their own, you know.
a little.
So,
Because if you look
kind,
there, you've got 9 degrees between Mercury and that aspect. So you could count Mercury in there actually as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
But you could bring in Neptune as well because it ties in because it's so close to. So
Hmm.
it all kind of ties in. But if you're being really fierce and strict with your orbs here, then really is the only thing really is that aspect to Uranus there.
Yeah. And
Which
so
you
it,
you can see that actually in the middle. You can see that aspect in the middle, the only thing that's coming off that. So either way, whichever whether you want to allow 10-degree orbs or whether you want to go for the smaller degree orbs of sort of 4 or 5 for this, either way, Uranus is going to be really important. And Uranus is
mhm.
in Taurus still for now, and that's all about land production, food production, and all those kind of things. Agriculture, money, and finances as well comes very strongly under that kind of. Perhaps we might see. I mean, you're way more expert in financial astrology than I am, Rod, but you can kind of maybe see sort of stock market wobbles, perhaps bit surprises going up or down. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree because not only me, with Christine Skinner or even my friend Olga Monaro, we all agree that from 2025 would be starting the, this kind of a ready to what should we say, fix the market, or the market should adjust. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a very gentle way to say it. But it mean it goes super crazy. But you can only you can already see in the United States the stock market is coming, is coming down. And then if we just waiting for something, they're just waiting for something, and then click, and it will go like a little bit landslide. That's the
Mm-hmm.
when Saturn
Mm-hmm.
crashed the Neptunian bubble. Although their exact conjunction is only next year. But
Mm-hmm.
I think from this April, they are very close to the orb to each other. So usually it's when they approach each other, get more intense rather than exact conjunction. So anytime from April, we can expecting something kind of a quite shocking is going to as in a financial way, but I think it's definitely related to geopolitical rather
Mm.
than finance itself. Yeah.
It's interesting as well um, that I've seen on the news that the American government has invested heavily in Bitcoin as well. So you've got that unconventional currency.
Mm-hmm.
You're in Taurus of unpredictability and notoriously unpredictable. The
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin market, from what little I've seen and know about the Bitcoin market, so that's really interesting. Or what do they call it? Not just Bit. What do they call it? Bitcoin is a
Crypto.
brand, isn't it? Pardon?
You mean the not Bitcoin, but the big like a crypto, right?
Cryptocurrency,
Yeah,
yeah,
all the
that's what I
crypto.
mean.
Yes,
Crypto,
yeah,
yeah, crypto. They've
yeah.
been in crypto, yeah, not necessarily in Bitcoin itself, but yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? This another thing to look at them. I'm looking a little bit at what isn't in the chart rather than what is in the chart, but it's very weak in air and earth, this chart.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Uranus in Taurus, and we've got Pluto in Aquarius, but other than that, it's a very fire air chart.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got Jupiter in Gemini there,
Yeah.
but it's very much, again, like the other chart we've looked at, very much dominated by fire and water.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't have so much air and earth, air brings that civilized behavior, air
Mm-hmm.
brings perspective, brings analytical thinking rather than shooting from the hip or shooting from your emotions on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it speaks to sort of, the lack of earth there, speaks to sort of, a lack of perhaps down to earth practicality as well, not seeing the bigger picture as well. The bigger perspective would be asked, I think, to look at the bigger perspective. I think the urgency of this Aries solar eclipse is such that we're just going to be reacting, the world or potentially us, if this is very strong in our chart, there's a potential of just reaction rather than planned action, just reacting to circumstances as and when they come up in the moment, perhaps even overreacting is
Yeah.
something to do with this, all this Aries energy. And I know we've got Chiron there also in Aries, and it's too far away from the eclipse to be
Yes.
ignored. But Chiron in Aries speaks to that wound of recklessness and of not of spontaneity and recklessness and moving too fast and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, we've
I
still
want.
got that Mars in Cancer, all those things
Yeah.
we talked about with that protectiveness. But there's a potential for sort of jumping the gun with all these Aries. Aries can be about weapons, right? And
Yes.
jumping the gun before you have all the facts. Don't forget, Mercury's still retrograde in this chart, so try not to
Mm.
jump the gun before you have all the facts.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
things might be confusing. It probably will be confusing. Venus is still retrograde. You've got all that Piscean stuff there. Still might be a lot of confusion. A lot of confusion. You don't have all the facts, so try not to jump the gun, I think would be,
Mm.
I would say for that
Yeah.
eclipse.
I like what you say about the kind of Mars Saturn trine. The Mars that give over a little bit of protection there. That
Mm,
trine, just like over a little bit, tiny bit, stability and the protection here. And well, I like to mention about the one fixed star again.
yes, please.
Yeah, but
Love it.
because it's so interesting because we have a Venus retrograde here, we have a Mercury retrograde here, the same degree, and then we have the solar eclipse at this degree. Definitely, this 9-degree Aries area is something worth us pay a tiny bit attention. We have a fixed star again in Pegasus. Wow, we are in the area of Pegasus called Algenib. Well, Algenib is the wingtip, the wing of the flying horse. So in the lunar eclipse, we have the Saturn, and then this one for the solar eclipse, we have the wing. So,
Wow.
well, it is very interesting because I mean, what should we say? Well, this point, this fixed stars is as a wing on the horse. So it gives the power. The horse move very fast. And when the horse added wings on, it make it even greater. So there is a sense of, like you say, some people want to do some great things, something even beyond their ability. Like I suppose to, a human being, but I want to be a superhero, Superman. I suppose I'm normal people, but I want to ride a Pegasus to arrive Olympics to eat and drink together with Olympian god and goddess. That is the mythology called the Pegasus syndrome. I
Hmm.
think one Greek in the one of the Greek mythology talking about this one someone who accidentally gets this Pegasus and think he be like a hero, but what he really want is ride the Pegasus to Olympia to Olympics and to party together with God and Goddess. Unfortunately, Zeus use the thunder to hit him down. So very interesting. There's a sense of like we are good, but we want to be great, and this there is a dangerous there. Yeah, you can achieve some great things, but if you are not careful and you are doing something beyond your
Mm,
ability, and
mm,
that could be dangerous. That could be the danger. So putting
yeah.
these things together is quite interesting.
That's really interesting. That strikes me as like having that hubris of taking on the
Ah,
gods. And then you get close to the gods, and Zeus is like, "No, not having that." Off you go, pew, they'll shoot you down, kind of thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, that megalomania is a word I'm hearing often at the moment.
yes,
Megalomania, and like, yeah, really, can you really take on God or the gods? Well, the myths, certainly the Greco-Roman myths tell us, not really.
yeah, yeah. So this point, this all the three things, especially Mercury and the Venus retrograde at this point, remind us say, think again. Think again. Not really. Are you really going to take that risk to ruin everything or to bet everything on one single things?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is maybe a point where we need to remind ourselves that when we're looking at the astrology, the planets represent the gods themselves.
Yes.
They are the gods, and we've talked about that semi-square
Hmm.
between that this eclipse and Uranus.
Yeah.
Uranus, now I equate Uranus also not just with the god Uranus, but also with Prometheus, which talks into
Ah,
what you're saying about stealing Pegasus to take on the to party with the gods because you think that you are like you are you feel like you deserve godlike
yeah.
status. And what happened to Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give it to man? Well, it didn't end well for him, did it?
Mm,
He had his liver picked out and endlessly, you know. Zeus
yeah.
sorted him out as well, So there's another theme there about hubris, about like you said, holding your horses
Yes.
and also also respecting, I guess,
Mm,
respecting the process,
mhm,
respecting. Um, Sometimes I think one of the things that I admire about the Aries energy, there's always a
mhm.
sense of, well, yeah, that's just the way it is. Yeah, I'm not not in the sense of a Saturnian stoic surrender and acceptance, but sort of, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think that's
Mhm.
the strength of that Aries energy, seeing things for what it is what it is, and that's that. And then we deal with it as it is. That Aryan, strong Aryan energy, right at the beginning.
Mhm.
This is what it is, and this is what we're dealing with, and we're just going to deal with it. So there's
Definitely.
strength there, isn't there?
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. It's so interesting, Mandy, because today only, well, although I always feel a little bit, missing Marcus, because Marcus is always jumping with
Always,
something even we cannot image.
always,
He's our what Wikipedia of traditional astrology. Oh
he
my
is.
God, I really miss it. So Marcus, if you hear this, please come back next month and but it is so interesting to discuss this kind of with the mythology and the different view of the how we're going to see this lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse. I think it's still, I mean, Aries, like you say, is like that brave, that kind of taking the action, still worth us to learn, to try, and to think positive, to think positively, you know,
Courage. Mm,
courage. And maybe
courage,
that's,
courage,
yeah,
courage. And also
yeah.
one final thing as well, it just makes me think of the tarot and the fool in the tarot and that idea of
Ah,
like, the beginning of a new journey. And it's always about
ah,
endings and new beginnings, completion of something so you can move into the next phase is what eclipses are all about. They're like supercharged lunation in effect a much longer shelf life. And that idea of fools rush in where angels fear to tread ties into a lot of what we're talking about mythologically as well, which is
definitely.
An Aryan thing. But fool in the context of the tarot is
Mm,
associated with Aries in the beginning. Fool in the sense of the tarot is about actually just that innocent naivety that
yeah.
you can just go for it because you don't think too much about the consequences. So in that sense, things anything is possible.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Somehow, like for example, that would be a little bit, my own political view, but I don't really enjoy what does and did and doing, but somehow I'm kind of learning from him, for him, nothing is impossible, and maybe you and I, Aquarius, Capricorn, that kind of a Saturnian thing, maybe we can learn from him.
Mhm.
Try to achieve something even greater or better, and try to not limit ourselves. Say, like you say, the fool in the tarot card. That's beginning. That's beginning a new journey. Everything is possible. That's right.
There's everything to learn and everything to experience.
I agree. Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. Everything to learn, everything to experience. Well, well, thank you so much, Mandy. Before we finish, I want to remind everyone on the 15th of March, Saturday, 4 p.m. GMT, our dear friend Alejo Lopez going to give a webinar about the coming up Saturn-Neptune conjunction. He called it From the War to Waves, Grief, of the Saturn Neptune conjunction. Sounds very interesting, from war, building the wall, to waves, how it's going to move. And I'm so looking forward to hear Alejo's talk about this Saturn Neptune conjunction. It's not just a mundane astrology, it could be on the personal level, how we're dealing with this important conjunction of this year. Well, thanks everyone, and also thank you, Mandy,
Can
to
I just
join
add
me.
that it's going to be
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Sorry, I just wanted to add that Alio is brilliant. He has such an amazing way of putting the information together in such
Yes.
a way that it's deep, it's rich, and it's really understandable. And he'll have some amazing. I haven't seen his talk, but I know he'll have some amazing insights. So please don't miss this one. This Saturn Neptune conjunction. I think we've already spoken about it a little
Yeah,
bit here, and you can see how important it is going to be. So yeah, try not to miss that one. I think
definitely.
you can get a recording if you sign up
Yes.
but you don't watch it live, you get the recording anyway, don't you?
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, thank you.
Your
Thank
time
you,
zone
Mandy.
is an
I
issue.
always forget to mention this. Well, if you cannot attend, you can sign up, and you still have a 1 month recording to to listen to streaming recording. Okay. So please go to our website, la.co.uk, and go into, book your place for Alejo's talk from war to waves. And thank you, Mandy, so much for your time today. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, and see you next month.
See you next month. Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye.